Hi, today I'll be using critical thinking concepts and tools to observe, analyze, and evaluate a case on medical ethics. I chose this topic because I thought it would be interesting to break down a case that has so many different factors that play into which side is more logical and more fair-minded. The case I chose is about a woman who is carrying conjoined twins. She lived on an island called Gozo, which didn't have the health care available to deal with such a complicated birth, so she went to England to have her babies Mary and Jody delivered. The infants were conjoined at the abdomen, their spines were fused, and they had one set of lungs and one heart between them. Doctors explained that without intervention, the girls would die within 6 months. Their only hope was to undergo an operation that would separate them, but it would save Jody because she was stronger and Mary would die. The parents were Catholics and refused to do the operation, their reasoning being that if it is God's will that both children shouldn't survive, then so be it. The hospital took the case to court to try and separate them despite the parents' wishes. The courts granted the hospital permission to perform the surgery regardless, and after the operation, Jody, the stronger one, lived, and Mary died as expected. First, I'll be using a few elements of thought to break down the components of the case apart and analyze them. First, we will look at the information we are given, which is basically the description of the case I provided, but I'll recap just to remind you. A woman needs an operation to separate her conjoined twins at birth in order for at least one to live. Parents are denying the operation because of their religion. The hospital took them to court and won permission to perform the operation. Point of view is very important in this case because it creates an outline for who could possibly be right in this case. The parents think the doctors are wrong because they think God should let nature take its course, but the doctors only want what is best for the parents and the twins. The doctors believe saving at least one girl is better than letting them both die, but the parents just don't see it that way. The purpose of this case was to fight for an operation that could potentially save one of the girls and give her a chance at a long, healthy life. There are a few concepts to consider here, one being that the parents would be unhappy going against their religion, but because of this, they could eventually lose both girls. Another concept to think about is that if the doctors simply agreed with the parents' wishes and didn't fight for the operation, as doctors, they may have issues because they haven't done everything possible to save the girls. Now I will address a few assumptions being made within this case. One major assumption the doctors are making is that the parents' religion is illogical when making a point for the girl's health because they might not believe the same religion. The doctors could just think this is silly, which caused them to take the case further by going to court. But on the parents' side, they can assume the doctors aren't religious because they aren't agreeing with them, but they only really want to help. The question at issue ties directly into the possible implications and consequences of this case. The question at issue is who is being more reasonable about the matter of doing the operation. If the operation isn't performed, implications are that the parents are happy, but their twins will die in 6 months. If the operation is performed, the parents will be unhappy, but they should be happy in the long run because they will have at least one healthy daughter. Now that we have evaluated the separate parts of this case, let's assess a few with a couple intellectual standards. Probably one of the most important standards we need to use here is accuracy. If the information the doctors are giving the parents isn't accurate, it makes literally everything else irrelevant. The case report states that most conjoined twins, if not stillbirth, die a few days after birth. If this isn't accurate, there could be extremely different implications. Depth ties into accuracy because if the doctors haven't done extensive research with much depth, the information can be inaccurate or imprecise. Also, if the doctors haven't used breadth to explore other similar cases and research with different points of view, not every possible option has been explored. This is definitely not okay when giving professional medical advice. Another important standard is fairness. Is it fair to the parents that the doctors are performing the operation against their wishes? Or is it simply unfair to the girls on the parents' part because they're trusting religion and could let both girls die? Or is it unfair to the girls on the doctor's part because one would live and one would immediately die? There are many factors you can assess fairness with in this case, and it is always relevant when thinking about possible implications. Deciding if the operation is performed in the court's eyes is very based on which argument is more logical. Here, I believe the doctors are being more logical, as the court thought as well. If the operation isn't performed, both girls will most likely die due to a religious belief they can't even understand yet. It seems more logical to give at least one girl a shot than to let them both die. A factor causing most of the conflict in this case is sociocentric bias. The parents are against saving at least one girl because of religion, but if they weren't following this religion, would it be clear to them that they should go through with the operation? According to Critical Thinking Guide, they have this bias by using the tendency to blindly conform to group restrictions in their religion. When, especially in a serious matter of life and death, they need to think critically and put their biases behind them in order to think fair-mindedly for the sake of their children. So in conclusion, I hope the breakdown of the factors of this case using the elements of thought, intellectual standards, and other critical thinking tools is helpful in understanding how important thinking critically is, especially in these types of situations. Thanks for watching.